Welcome to the podcast about Lighting Matters. Our unflinching conversations uncover the nuances and complexities which shape the craft of lighting design.
We explore the pivotal whys behind a lighting designer's choices and find honest answers to your most challenging lighting questions because lighting matters. Welcome to the Lighting Matters podcast. I'm so excited that you've decided to join us and listen today. My name is Lisa Reed, and I'm with Burkett Lighting Design in St. Louis, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, this is Avi Moore with Morlights in Chicago, and I am very excited to have with us today Jen Park with Park Fowler. We go way back. And I think my most memorable experience is the AIA Chicago had their own version of the business forum. I don't remember what they called it.
Transform. Right?
Transform, which was really great. And Jen is not a lighting designer, so we love having non-lighting designer opinions on the podcast. Jen, thank you so much for taking a little time and joining us today.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation, and it's pops up all the time in my field as an architect, and yet sometimes also gets it can be quiet in terms of talking about lighting design too. So I think we'll get into that, but I'm excited to share some stories with you guys.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to Park Fowler, creating Park Fowler.
So Park Fowler is myself and my partner, Brad Fowler. And we have about a team of 20 of us in our practice in Chicago. We actually started the practice as Park Fowler Plus now 3.5 years ago. Prior to that, we were partners at Brinstool Lynch, which was a firm that was in Chicago for about 35 years. And we were managing partners and transitioned that firm as partners decided, David Brinstool and Brad Lynch decided that, it was time to hand over reins. So that, I think it's been great to have the history of work behind us that our predecessors had been able to kind of pass over to us. And then we've been able to take it from there, grow the practice, kind of be future forward and think about the kind of values that we want to bring and how we want to shape the practice now. So I think the lineage there for sure is design matters.
Nice.
And I think that we have always been consistent about putting that at the forefront. I think that's what distinguishes our practice from others. And I think that our clients really appreciate that we're able to kind of think at that level and really do what it takes to prioritize good design.
I know we talk about lighting matters on the Lighting Matters podcast, but I think it's also interesting to take a quick moment and talk about that transition, right? Like, how was that being a partner in the firm, a principal in the firm, and then saying, okay, they're out. Now we're going to do the new name. We're going to do a name transition. We're going to have, how did that work out?
The part I did leave out is that one of the partners, Brad Lynch, did pass away unexpectedly. Our transition was in the works, and we, had our agreements, and we have basically, we were going to buy out the partners. So that was in the works, but it was like accelerated at that moment, in which then we had to make decisions real fast.
Wow.
And big decisions real fast. I probably have never spoken to as many lawyers and business, financial folks and bankers and you name it, like in that area that I have in my entire life. So in a short period of time. But, I think once we got through some of the practicalities of things and when Brad Fowler and myself, we decided, listen, we are going to commit to this. Like we could have walked, right? We could have been like, oh no, like this is too much. Like maybe we're not ready for this or something like that. But I have had iterations of my own practice previously. Brad Fowler comes from a very entrepreneurial family. So we've had it in our blood, I think. And we said, listen, like we're going to do this, and we're all in. I think when that happened, and because the passing of Brad Lynch, and David Brinstool was the partner that was pretty much already retired, right? And he's emeritus to us. He still kind of hangs around. He comes to our parties, is what he does. So,
Nice.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good gig if you
right?
can get
Totally good gig, right?
I am the party goer.
Exactly. That's what I aim to be too. When I retire, I'm just going to be the party goer. But, it was a good time to rebrand, as you said. Like that was like a way to say, okay, let's put a fresh take on this. We can still honor the legacy and the history of our predecessors and all the things that they, conveyed to us. But it was a good time to also say there are things that we would like to shape and put our stamp on. And so we made quick work of being able to do that. It was a good refresh for us. It was a good refresh for, I think, the staff. And so far, I think it's been working out pretty well. I was worried that like all those quick decisions, you kind of like are like, oh my God, what if well, if we didn't make it the right one? But I think we were very diligent in the kind of doing, playing out as many scenarios as possible, understanding all the risks, and so, 3.5 years in, I feel like almost like impressed with myself, like we did it, like, we're still alive,
Yeah, I was about to comment on that because I've been through something like that a couple of times through acquisition myself, and 3 years, it feels good. Like it feels like, okay, we did that. But it takes a long time. The first year and a half is, I don't know, in my experience, is rough. There's just a lot of bumps, whatever they are, different things.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I did learn, from transitioning firms, and I've said this to others who are going through similar, that as we took over the firm and things, we really thought that we were going to have the clients that Brinstool Lynch had would also kind of transition over, and the projects like continued on that we had, but it was very. Yeah, we realized that like a lot of the clients, they stuck with David and Brad. They had that relationship, right, built in there. So that was one of those moments where we were like, oh wow, no, wait, hold on. Like they may not come with us, so we got to hustle. Like we really need to but it was like a kind of a shove you out the door, and you're just you got to fend for yourself all of a sudden, right? Like how that cush of that stuff. But that's, I think, where I feel very proud, because now we do the clients are our relationships, and we made those things, like we just put in a lot of effort in those early years, and the return, I think, is showing now, where I feel like now we have a track record of this, and we've gotten a lot of new projects, and we have our own set of clients that are, you know, have a relationship with Park Fowler Plus, right?
So you said design matters. We talk a lot about lighting matters on the podcast, and I'm wondering how, and you kind of were alluding to it a little bit, but how lighting matters in your projects, and how it comes about maybe early in the process as you're thinking about putting a team together, or just schematic design. Oh, we got to figure out how to light these spaces.
I think our practice, we're thoughtful designers. And I think part of that is being thoughtful, not just at the big conceptual stage, but all the way through the details. And then stitching everything together. Like as architects, I feel like we're weavers, right? We're taking a lot of the components and we're making them into like one beautiful, cohesive composition. And part of that weave is lighting amongst all the other parameters, all the other inputs, all the other consultants. And everybody has a place, right? Everybody has their expertise and things that they bring, and it's like without that one string, right? You have a gap. Your pattern, your composition is off, and lighting is one of those critical uh, woven moments, because the way in which we conceive of space as architects is one thing, but and I think everybody thinks, oh yeah, well, you need structure, you need like cool, like those are the basics. But I like to think that as you go, the real power of what we do and how we shape space is experience, right? And lighting, I think, is just that is that perfect tool to help refine that experience, to enhance it, to shape it, to so that people really are feeling, you know, the best impact of like what you've created. And I often think though it's in the details too. Like I said, the way I like to think of good design at the detail level is if we did it right, you won't see it, right? So, and I
Right.
think lighting in one of its um, best moments is that kind of you don't perceive it necessarily, right? I think there's a misperception, maybe a common misperception in the, you know, to anybody who's not in our industry, right? That lighting is like just decorative. It's like that cool light fixture, hanging there, whatever it is, or it's the things that you can see. But the best lighting, I think is the things that you can't really see, but it does the work.
Yes.
When we're talking to clients, that's kind of, I like to say, okay, I know this is a fun stuff, is the decorative stuff, right? But, we're doing all this work to create and shape a space. And part of that is to be able to layer it,
Yes.
with that nuance and be able to kind of have the control, right, of that too, that experience. And you're going to do that through lighting. That's kind of the way I like to think of things. And I think that's why there's such a science to it that I don't even attempt to I mean, I can like look at the photometric, like try and be like, sure, kind of get it, but like
Yeah,
I don't know what to make of it. Like what
that's
now
right.
what?
There's that photometric aspect of it, but I mean, I would love to hear more about how you talk to your clients, and also I think you teach. How do you talk to students about it? Because that's the thing that we are constantly bumping up against is communicating what lighting design is, and that it's not just fixtures and photometrics, but it is shaping space. So,
Yeah.
yeah, any other tips?
The way that we start to talk about it with students, I would say, is like starts with daylighting, right? With things that just like the environmental conditions. I would say actually it's probably hard to even get them to think that much, right? And oftentimes, right? You are always thinking about like how you position your architecture, your building, your massing with solar orientation. And how do you just capture that? Do you understand, right? What the just environment and working with that, which is consistent, right? And you can digest that, you can get that, and you can then understand where do I put apertures or what do I want shade and things like that. I want to say we start there um, with students, and if they can grasp that, and if we can get into the interior environments, then it is. I mean, I think it can range really. It depends like how far into it. Like, are we talk, you know, um, you know, controlled lighting? I think that I would just say it's difficult to get into that conversation with students. As young designers, they start to approach that better and understand that better and how to stitch that together. On the flip side, with clients, gosh, I think it really ranges and it depends on the client, right? We have like in our office, we have works that we do work with that we do with developers, multifamily development, large scale, hundreds of units. Their goals for a project are different than an institutional client or a university client, a cultural, institutional client. It's almost like a spectrum, kind of, because like at the utmost, I think the clients that maybe have the most sympathy for lighting are those cultural, institutional clients, right? That know like that are dealing with artwork, gallery spaces. They know the nuances of color enhancing or not, or how, they know they have to deal with that environmental condition. They have to deal with the interior to such a fine-tuned degree. And then I think it kind of like goes down the scale. And to be honest, I think the hardest conversation and hardest people to convince are the ones that are in development, right? Is they have financial goals, honestly, to meet. So, and the best of them, which we hope to work with, now we do have clients in this space, which is like that they are both financially driven, but also appreciate really good design, right? And they are ready to like make that investment. So again, like it's like if you value design, I think it's not a hard conversation to have. But if you are dealing with folks that don't really have, design is not high in their list and it's some other priorities, it's just going to be a much more difficult conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think we try to advocate all aspects of it, to find some way in which we can, preserve like design, right? And even in the projects that are really tight on budgets, right? Too. So we have to think about. I think budget is also a driver too sometimes.
Right. That's just a design constraint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. So there's like two great conversations, and I'm hoping we can start with the student side, which I think is really interesting because recently I was at a conference. A gentleman came up to me, and he was recently out of architecture school. I don't recall where. And he was talking about exactly what you were saying, right? It's all about massing and position of the building and, what daylight's going to do to the building. And I asked him what I thought as a lighting designer, a very simple question is that, do you start thinking about how much daylight gets into the center where you need to then add electric light? And his first response was, what do you mean, artificial lighting? I was like, well, hold on. There's no such thing as artificial lighting. It's either daylight or electric. So please, if you learn nothing from me, just take that
I like
away.
It's still real light. It's just
still
electric.
real. But he said, no, we never talked about that. And it shocked me as a lighting person because I think of daylight as luminaire number one and sunlight as luminaire number one. The sky is maybe 1A or 2, depending on the situation. But then just beyond that, it goes away or it becomes so much on one side where then you need electric to fill in. And, it's something that I'm wrestling with constantly on some of our projects where, experienced architecture teams saying, oh, yeah, the whole building will be daylight. And, 20 feet into the building, you went from 1,000-foot candles to 2. And that doesn't work, right? And you see all these beautiful daylight renderings.
Yeah.
And sweet. But when I'm standing at the top of the escalator, can I actually see that first stair when the sun is, right there? Like glare discussion, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a high level conversation, that's not like student level, but
As a longtime educator, I would say it's not out of the realm of what they should be learning and can learn. But it's like, as you said, right? If you don't get number one, it's really hard to teach number two, I think. So I think that's what I see a lot is I would love to get to number two. I'd love to get to 3 and 4 and 5.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you have limited time with these students. I know most architects and interior designers maybe have one lighting class, maybe. Or maybe it's just a portion of another class or studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think like, I don't think that I got much of that until I had an internship. And then I was like, trying to understand general, like I said, like reading a photometric chart. What did that mean? Or just generally understanding the differences between different types of lights, right? And it was still, at a very base level, but I think that the students could take that on, at least some of those things.
And some students, you find the occasional student who has an interest, gets passionate about lighting, and a good percentage of those end up becoming lighting designers. But yeah, I think it is tough because those initial to start talking about lighting, you have to have a bunch of vocabulary. You have to understand those photometrics like you were talking about, even though that's not really the primary. So I think people get lost in the vocabulary and the early things that you have to learn to really do the important part of lighting.
The other way I think about teaching those things is maybe they're not ready to design it, but to understand it. And, I think the best way for students to learn is just to get out there and experience the space. So one of my studios that I taught for soon to be graduating students, we traveled to New York and to DC, and we saw cultural institutions. That's the studio was about designing centers of culture, and we went to galleries and museums, and we went to the World Trade Center Museum. We went to the National African American Museum of History and Culture right in DC. We also just went to, name any one of the many museums on the mall, right?
Portrait gallery. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All famous lighting designers.
I was
and
about
every
to
single one of
call
those.
out a former podcast guest,
Yeah.
Scott Rosenfeld, who works at
yeah.
the Smithsonian.
Exactly. And in the diversity of what is being shown in all those museums and galleries are different lighting conditions. And I asked them, about what was it, like, how was your experience? What did you think of the space? And what do you think contributed to that? Right. And then, what some people may highlight it, but if not, I'm like, okay, like, even what I think is pretty amazing about some of the, sometimes we think lighting is like, oh, just everything's bright, right? It's like, no, like the subtlety of things that are diffuse and diffuse light and how they create that and how they shape that. But also you go into like the World Trade Center Museum was like, it's a dark space, right? Like, but you still have to illuminate dark space. Right. That always to me like blows my mind how you, in your field of lighting design, how do you design for like darkness, but still able to be luminous enough to feel like you can see everything and that, but also, be able to maintain that environment that wants to be soft, dark, quiet, or something like that. So I bring those things up, I think, to the students, and they, then they're like, "Oh, the light bulb goes off." But, haha, the pun, I know, but
Nice, I
Light
know.
bulb. No, it's my favorite
puns.
Gru moment, right? Light bulb.
Right.
Yeah, I taught for a while years ago, and I used to have that. They were interior designers, and it was their one lighting class. And I had them journal. Just take a journal with you, and every time you notice light, write it down. What did you notice about it?
Yeah.
The World Trade Center site's such a important one too, where you're coming from the brightness of New York City on a sunny day, and then going down into the exhibit area, right? You have the old walls that are there. That's David Lehman did that lighting design. And then you have the exhibits, but then you have the elements, and then you have the thing that's floating. And there's so many pieces to what's going on there. And then you have the site itself that turns into something at night versus day. And this understanding that what you design as an architect and landscape architect during the day can potentially completely flip on itself into a nighttime strategy with the assistance of lighting design. It is incredible, and once you recognize that, right, and you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, that's a flip. There's a switch that happened, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's really and those are all like great, so different museum environments to just appreciate the design of those spaces, plus lighting and materiality and finish and people movement and all that. Very, very different.
Yeah. And I think those spaces, you brought this up, the inside to outside relationship and transitioning. I find that is also like so complex to design for, so that it is not like so harsh, right? You don't want to like, you're like in bright space, you're in dark space. Like how, you allow for that kind of moment of transition, and how you can achieve that. Or unless, I mean, I was just in um we did our spring break with the family in Amsterdam and Paris, and we went to, of course, did the greatest hits in Paris because the kids had never been. So did the Louvre, and we did the Musée d'Orsay, and I love the Musée d'Orsay, like because it was actually like it felt like outside was in, inside was out. Like it didn't have to like, it had the beautiful kind of diffuse kind of barrel vaulted skylight in the main space. And then it softened into the gallery spaces, right? So I think lighting, just like the control of it, right? You can, do you want to extend the outside in, right? And then, like it helps such the sequence of things, um, to be able to do that, to um, allow for that narrative, I guess, to kind of stretch more.
Yeah. Well, and then to transition a bit, because I think that's a great transition to the stretch of different clientele you were talking about. I think it is a challenge for architects and lighting designers to explain to that developer who's like, yeah, I just need lights because I'm going to sell this thing, to understand how valuable the right lighting designer is in capturing the lowest cost to get you the value of the building you want to sell it for, right? And I think that's a problem, and Jen, you could potentially correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a problem that we have as lighting designers, that we need to help you as an architect explain to a developer like that. Hiring us is not a premium. Hiring us saves you so much money in the end. And really, when you're on a budget, right? You're gonna build this building for $1 million and you want to sell it for 4. The cheapest thing you can upgrade to make that building feel like a $4 million building is lighting. And that lighting designer is going to help you do one of the most important things, I believe, for that developer, which is become the lighting police and make sure that and my team will yell at me for saying this, but this is the example I always like to use. The $10 downlight that you have to have in the unit, you're actually paying $10 for.
Right.
And that's where Ann Kussner always uses that as her favorite line, as like being the lighting police, right? And explaining to that kind of person what that value brings, because then also it brings great value to the design that Park Fowler is putting together, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, that end goal, right? Spend $1 million, sell it for 4. How do you do that?
Yeah, we were just looking at a multifamily, and as so often happens, somebody in the kitchen had dropped, the 3 downlights between the island and the work surface, and we said that's not where you need the light. That's not the light you need, and you can do this with 2 if you strategically locate them. So we just saved them a downlight in every unit. So that's what
Yeah.
lighting designers do, not just come in and gold plate and specify expensive products, but actually we can help save money, like Avi said.
Right. And I think I think it's just getting that messaging out, right? Like, if they're thinking about what is my, ROI and everything, then, that's the case that, you guys could bring forward. And I love those precedents, Lisa. Like, yeah, just be like, hey, with this project, we took out however many hundreds of lights. And isn't that the cost savings compared to like what you might pay for our, I don't know, design fees or something, right? It's like,
right.
It's strange, like in design in general and our fees. That's a whole other conversation, right?
We could have a whole show about that.
Oh, a whole show on that.
Yeah, I know, but
And getting paid on time too, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, I know. No, instead of being the piggy, the bank or whatever, the piggy bank that's like holding on to like, I don't know. It's just, anyways, we're not the bank. I don't want to be the lender of like, our services. So I think the more often, I think again, to who your client is it's a different, that you got to figure out what their priorities are, what are their, and then position what we do to help meet their needs. Yeah. I think who wouldn't love being more efficient or cost effective or finding that, Also, there's that we battle we've always done it this way kind of thing.
Right.
We've always used this one, so it should work again, Maybe there is that thing that they haven't, like what is the latest, greatest that's really energy efficient for them too, that they haven't thought about, and that helps in the maintenance of things and the upkeep, right?
Well, and it's such a different conversation just in those residential towers of somebody who's going to build it and sell it versus build it and rent it and own it and add it to their portfolio. Yeah, maybe they'll sell it in 10 years or the market changes or whatever it may be. But I think it's so important to understand that, well, as an architect, as a lighting designer, like what is the end goal for this project so you can design it appropriately, right? And prepare. And I mean, you have to have lights. Every single project needs lights. The question is, do you want to find the most energy efficient or cost efficient solution? If design doesn't matter, then maybe one of those two things matter. If it's just meeting code, great. But I mean, I don't think there's a client that any of us have ever had that isn't looking at how much the downlights are.
Yeah, right.
And just that alone begets having somebody look at that one line item. I always say this, and people in the podcast have probably heard it in the past, but I have this theory that lighting is one of those few things in a building that you can actually count. And it's why it is always easily VE target. Because you can count in a residential building appliances, and you can count the sinks and toilets and faucets and shower heads. And then you can count doors, and you can count lights. You can't count drywall. You can't count the trim around the cabinet, the baseboard, right? Like all of those things are just kind of square foot estimates, how many sheets of drywall, how many gallons of paint, right? But you can click. Oh, okay. And then I can go to Home Depot and see how much that costs. Okay, why is this more than that? And I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there, but that's my theory.
It's interesting. It's an interesting theory you have there. I haven't thought about that. I'm like wondering, but I mean, you need lighting, right? So like, I feel like people question like how many lights you need because they just assume because they don't know, like, you know, and whether we're getting into that conversation of like, have you efficiently like laid out lighting, or you're just doing what you've always done before and nobody's questioned it yet. So like you can turn, instead of it being a VE thing, you can potentially turn it into being like a cost saving measure because you are being more efficient and nobody's looked at it. But, because I think, most people are just like, oh, well, I don't know. We need it. And I don't know how to like not have lights. So, but
Yeah.
Right.
the right lights, I don't know, like the right lights and is a big thing. And maybe another thing that gets overlooked is, and it comes up a lot, like color temperature stuff. And I think you see this as not great all the time if you don't have someone really looking at this with that focus, is that you transition from one space to another and it's like blue over here and then warm over here. I don't, like
Right. It's
like
inconsistent.
the
That's when you
basic,
notice is when it's inconsistent.
right? Exactly. It's when you notice, right?
When you
Again,
need your lighting police.
yeah,
Right. Or you take it another step, going back to our daylight conversation, right? If you have a very warm color temperature with a lot of daylight because you are designing for the idea of dinner time, during the day it feels kind of muddy and ambery all of a sudden, right? But then if you flip the other way and you design for daytime, but then you go to dinner time, now you're in this crazy blue space, and what you want is candlelight, no ambiance, right? Or the other side of it, in like an office space type area, 4 o'clock in December, you got, crazy blue light, but there's no light coming in through the window. What do you do there? And just having that conversation, and then feeling it, looking at it during a design conversation, taking a conference room that you're meeting in and saying, okay, this is what we're thinking about for color temperature. And then close all the shades on a sunny day and say, and this is what it'll feel like at 4 o'clock in December. Because we're designing right now in that moment versus thinking about the fact the sun moves and the color changes, and we still are in the
And
office at 4 o'clock at night.
there
Yeah,
are
sorry, go ahead.
regional preferences. Color temperature is such a fun topic of conversation too, because there are regional preferences for different space types, and your eye adapts and sort of white balances to the color that you're in. So if you're going from a warmer space to a cooler space, that cool space feels really cool. But if you're going the opposite direction, then the warm space doesn't feel right. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love color temperature. It's fascinating.
I think it's a mystery to me in general. I just know when it's like wrong. I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good. So,
Well, it's actually fun. In the coming weeks, we have Neocon coming up, and we are going to be showing a lot of these kinds of questions. Very simply, there's going to be some lighting vignettes, and one of them, that one that I'm actually involved in, is going to have all these samples. I just learned about Material Bank. Coolest thing
oh,
ever. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Order any materials you want. It shows up 4 days later,
Yeah.
and you can order 2 of them. Bring it on. So we're going to have a blacked out space, and one, I'm still working on this, but I feel like the one side should say specified. And these are all the finishes. I have a light oak floor. I have my favorite white Snowbound from Sherwin-Williams, kind of on one side. And then on the other side, it's going to say as installed. And it's going to be totally different color temperature and really terrible color rendering. Same materials on both sides.
I love it. Because so part of our practice, we do our interiors group, and there, we do a lot of material bank and
Mm-hmm.
have tons of samples. And quite honestly, our office space, we're in a high rise. We've got these nice bluish curtain wall glazing going on here, but part of our office is also interior, right? So then it's just based off of that quality of light in that room from the overhead lights. And I struggle because I'm like over there, I'm like, oh, this looks great. And then I bring it out over here and I was like, oh my God, is that It's totally different. And we're working with, with like soft, if you're working with soft palette, like that subtlety just like it just gets washed out or goes away. It's very difficult. And I try to think though about where is this going, right? Like it's going to be within controlled lighting, within a unit, or is this going to be, exposed to a lot of daylight and things like that? But I think it's pretty drastic when you're trying to work with subtleties.
I mean, take it one step further and think about, like McDonald's or Caterpillar, right? Those colors have to be perfect. And, they're almost, they could be trademarked. However, I don't know exactly. But if you start to extrapolate those colors into the interior environment with other elements, and then it's not that color, that becomes a challenge without having the right light, right? Ultimately, lighting, we only see that color because the light we are experiencing has that color and is reflecting back into our eyes, right? The kind of technology side of seeing that light. And I think it's a common experience. It's, again, not necessarily something a developer who's racing to the bottom would, care about. But as we start to get into the institutions and some of the corporate clients and other things, it becomes something really important. And it becomes something of well, who's going to manage that, right? Who's going to take what your interiors team is doing and make sure that the interiors team understands the light that exists and make sure that the finishes, when they get installed, actually look like what they look like when creating the boards and getting client approval.
And we got engaged one time with a client whose color was red. And they had a museum and some of the historic elements, the red was fading. And so what causes the fading is the radiant energy that's absorbed by the object. So you want to minimize, you still want it to be white light, but you want to minimize the colors that are absorbed so that you protect the item from fading, prevent fading, so it stays that color as long as possible. I mean, so that's like really, really nerdy, fun stuff.
Yeah. We're working in, well, yeah, I can't say yet, but it's a special project on Michigan Avenue. And Lux Populi, you guys, Thomas, you guys had him on your
Thomas
show.
is
Thomas
great.
has been on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're working with him on this. And it's fascinating, learning so much. I mean, I think I learn a lot from all our consultants, those conversations, but, because it's the challenging space here, and how to maneuver. This one is like also filled with daylight, but then we'll have becomes evening and people are still occupying it. And it's tall and voluminous. And it's just like, I mean, I don't even know. And the lighting, currently is, 20 years old or something like that. And so we've been having really great conversations about the possibilities of things and how to enhance what we're doing architecturally and on the interior environment and exterior too. So I'm always learning. I'm enjoying that part of things. That's why I'm an architect, because I feel like back to the weave, like, we got to weave all these parts in there. And to do that well, we have to understand at least, a baseline level of some of that stuff. And then, we rely on you all to like, really finesse and fine tune and put your expertise on things.
Well, it's a verb. You're architecting, right? I mean, right? It's putting it all together. So to that end, we have come up with a theory on the Lighting Matters podcast that I'd love to run by you, which is this idea: in the built environment, there are 4 visual professionals that shape the space. You have the architect, you have the interior architect, you have a landscape architect, and a lighting designer. Does that potentially play with you?
I would jive with that. I mean, the visual space, right? Like what are those, who are those people orchestrating that, right? That those four, I think, shape that. And if you take out one, it's a different environment, different experience. And they all lean on each other too. You have to kind of integrate, and you have to have that, like, how do they work, in concert with each other.
Yeah, it's the four legs of the table, right? It's not really a tripod because there's four. It's something we've been working on. We like to ask all the non-lighting designers who join the podcast, because I think that kind of leads me to the other question I would ask you is, what would be your recommendation to the lighting design community? Not to Morlights or RBLD or Lux Populi, but to the lighting design world to say, look, this is what I need to get my clients to understand how much I need you.
I mean, I think we talked about some of it. I think depending on the client type, right? Like, what are their goals, and then meeting that. If it's return on investment, and it's a numbers game, like, okay, we can work that up and show some case studies for how we were able to accomplish that. I think for other clients, I think maybe it is just helping to enhance the space and your expertise in, like, understanding, certain light is going to corrode the red or whatever. I don't know, like,
Right.
and then I would say there are those well-intentioned clients that maybe just don't have the budget, and so what are you able to do effectively for them too, that they could really, they desire it, but how do they get that, to really enhance what they're doing? Like, I think about, like, all the non-for-profits that we work with and things like that. They value design, they want to have it, but, can we work at their budget, so that we're not just, I think about this for architecture all the time, like this, like, we're not just being exclusive. We value good design. Good design should be shared with everyone. Um, and I think that's not to say that we shouldn't get our appropriate fees for things, but we can also figure out a scope of work that works for them, that meets their budget, that gives them an opportunity to showcase design, right? So that's where we meet in the middle on some of those. I also think clients really love, like, they love before and after kind of things too. And they like to see it, like, and I think you guys would have great visuals for that. It's like the space without, the
Yeah.
space
And
with, like the
right.
blue light versus, like, this light, which,
Yeah.
what do you like better? Like, this is something that was like, oh gosh, do you want this kind of space, or, doesn't this feel better? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they
Yeah.
react very quickly to that.
One of the vignettes I've really been fighting for, is a very simple one that's just basically a little table that you can put your hand on. And when you put your hand, it will be lit by 5-foot candles, 25-foot candles, or 50-foot candles. And they'll be all right next to each other. I mean, just putting a feeling to that number, right? Like, there's so much conversing that happens in our profession up in theory versus, like, feeling it, touching it, experiencing it, right? I mean, Jen, you started with it. We create experiential environments. Even that residential high rise built for $1 million and sold for $4 million is an experience you're creating when you walk in the door to get somebody comfortable with paying you that rent or buying that condo in that building, right? Like, it starts at the front door, right? Well, location, then the front door, the lobby, right? Like, it's the whole experience through. But feeling it and seeing it, and I think that's part of what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
befores and afters, tell the stories.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I think, I mean, you can see that. I mean, if we work in the visual space and we're the four legs of the table, we should give them the visual space, right? Like,
Yeah. You got to show them. That's why we're
Yeah.
excited about these vignettes at Neocon. That's why we have in our studio, we have, the color temperature, changeable color temperature, just so people can see it. Because you have to feel that. You can't
Yeah.
write that in
Exactly.
words.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
But I think the other piece of this that I'm really excited about, you kind of putting more emphasis on, Jen and Lisa, and I've been talking about this a lot, is more publicity about what lighting designers do and the value we bring. Just the other day, and this is the first time I'm going to talk about it, but just the other day, this idea of lighting designers involved with architectural awards came up in a conversation, and I quickly chat GPT'd it. And just some quick information over the last 12 months of the 100 projects that won architecture or interior design awards via AIA, Dezeen, you name it, 0 had listed on the awards websites that lighting design or lighting designer was involved.
Oh, really?
But thanks to Chat
No
GPT,
accreditation.
I was able to force it to search every single one of those jobs and Lisa added the great idea, add dash lighting design on all 100 projects. And every single project linked to a lighting design firm or a lighting designer who was involved in the job.
Mm.
So what's really interesting and what was crazy to me in my private chat GPT world has gotten to know me pretty well. It really said at the bottom, your problem is not presenting the idea that all of these projects that won awards that everybody's excited about had lighting designers on it. The problem is that nobody knows lighting design exists, let alone if they were involved in these projects to make them successful and to get them to win awards. And this was just last night. I mean, there was kind of this extended eye-opening scenario that it really comes back to publicizing and educating the clients and the customers the value. And it's not that it's expensive.
Well, okay, maybe it's a choice of the architect. I know you're supposed to list your team members and your consultants. Maybe this is a thing to go back to AIA Chicago, because I think on other award submissions, like maybe national, you're supposed to list all your consultants, right? And I certainly have listed my lighting designers when for our projects that I understand that is a big part of it, and so I'm like wondering, do we need to be more specific about that? And maybe it's a product of sometimes, they just want list only 5 consultants or something like that. When projects are
Right.
complex and everybody deserves recognition, right? So it could be much more explicit about that. That the team is a team, and it should be everybody that was under that umbrella, for sure. I'm so surprised by that.
When I was on the AIA Chicago board, there was that I brought that up to the awards committee, and there was a lot of pushback on, well, why would we add that? This is a architect's award. And it took, I think my stint was 4 years, and I think it took the right person to then become in charge of the awards to say, absolutely, we should include that. But what was so interesting in 2025 awards, Lisa and I actually sat next to each other, and you could tell which firms listed all the consultants because they'd all be listed. And the ones who are just like, yeah, we did it. And here's the photographer and here's the GC. And I think there was one, Lisa, that you said, oh yeah, we designed that. And your firm
Probably.
wasn't there, not to call anybody out, but it's twofold. I think it comes, I don't blame AIA. And I don't blame the architect submitting awards. I come back and blame the lighting community. 47 years old, young guy, this industry has been around a lot longer. And this idea of being the fourth visual professional, in the theater, you can't do a stage production without a lighting designer. We talked about this a little bit, right? It's a black box. There is no light on that stage without a lighting designer. So there's always a lighting designer. It might just be house lights or whatever, but there's a lighting designer. Well, I blame the lighting design community, the people higher up, right? The AIA equivalent to our group to say, look, isn't this your job to elevate? And we just need to use this podcast, use the conversations, and make more available to then get that elevated. Because I don't think it's fair to go to Dezeen or to AIA Chicago and say, look, you always have to have lighting designer listed. And whether that's the rep agency or an electrician, it doesn't matter. That's not their place.
To
That's
their
not
point,
position.
yeah, and to their point, it's architecture awards. It's not lighting awards.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how I think I've seen architecture and what it is and what we conceive of as an architect evolve in my time. And I think that, our predecessors were the staunch, like, I'm sole architect. I have the vision, and it's but me, myself, and I. However, I think now, like I don't come into, and I said this at the front, right? I feel like as an architect, we're the orchestrator, right? We are
the conductor.
The conductor.
Yeah.
We are the conductor,
Yeah.
right? And we are weaving all of those musical instruments together to make one beautiful, musical ensemble. And I mean, I see the work that we do in that way. Like, yeah, we have a vision for things and we have a spatial acuity. And of course, we have talents in that sphere, but it doesn't mean much if you can't get your team to work in concert together, to work together, right? It will, yeah, it'll fall short, right? And this is also where I think, if you can do that and everybody's kind of got that same kind of baseline value of things, like all the team members, then you make beautiful things. If some people are locked out of that, like, kind of framework and feel differently, that's when you have, you're fighting your battles. And that includes a client and that includes a GC too.
Exactly.
Right? I say that because I think being the conductor, we as architects and everybody as designers, we have to value and respect everybody that is contributing to the team. So, yeah, I think, this is the podcast that you guys are doing is a great way to kind of get a better understanding, right? This is a lot of it is like getting an understanding out there to an audience and having them see it through your lens, be it somebody in the field of design or someone outside of that. You have to gain that awareness, right? And then I think people can start to also help in that promotion of what you're doing while you are also self-promoting, right? While you are also getting your community to try to voice that better for yourselves. But yeah, I mean, we have to. I think I've learned that through working, as a working through communities, trying to diverse communities and kind of elevating women too, and in our profession, like just know that you have to be able to get some awareness out there and talk it through different people that are just less aware. They're just, and it's not that they don't. It's right. It's like I think there's a misperception that like they're against you or they're for you, but that's not it. Some people just don't know. A lot of people just don't know.
Okay, so now I'm feeling like Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn. Anyway, so we've recruited you, Jen, to be one of our promoters, and thank you for that. So I hope it's not too early to ask sort of our favorite final question. Do you have a favorite illuminated space or some other good lighting story?
One of my favorite spaces in Chicago is the Rookery and the atrium in there. I think I'm fascinated with that space for several reasons. One, I have a penchant for kind of ornamentation and details, and this that world. I did a lot of research back in the day, maybe when I was at UCLA, in that world, and really thinking about the evolution of that, um, and I think it has that quality. But I think that ornamentation, that level of detail, that pattern making that is, on the skylights above or the atrium above is really, it's, I mean, it's because of the filtration of light, and but then the like how, you can enjoy that space, daytime or in the evening. And I'm not sure how controlled of an environment that has become in terms of lighting or not, but I do think a lot of my favorites are in the museum realm. The other one I recollect that I was like kind of like, wow, that's really great was I think there's a Chipperfield Museum, the Jumex Museum in Mexico City. I know it's by David Chipperfield, and like he just creates these like beautiful volumes of space that have um, some of them have these really deep skylights that filter daylight through, but also like it's coupled with controlled, lighting too, such that you don't feel like you're getting daylight here and you're walking into another space. It's just, again, like I think the best ones are where you don't notice it. You just feel that wonderful ease of transition, and you navigate through space, and you kind of softly led into kind of a darker, introspective zone, and then brought back out to, so um yeah, I think one of the reasons I love working with cultural institutions and shaping those spaces is because of that. And then there's the challenges, right, of like how do you seamlessly make that happen. So
Amazing. Well, Jen, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to join us today. I know your time is very valuable, but we're trying to get the word out and get people to understand the value of lighting, and lighting matters, right? It really does. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah, well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Lighting matters. As we wrap up, we want to reiterate how much we value your time, and we hope you found it as much fun to listen to as we had creating it. Remember to like it and share this content with your friends and colleagues.
The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors. Our content has general application, but we recommend obtaining personalized guidance from a professional IALD lighting designer, such as RBLD or Morlights, for your next endeavor.